Shizuki, an introverted middle schooler, often found himself the subject of gossip. One day, he overheard a group of girls mocking him. They teased one of their friends for speaking to him, calling him creepy. The girl, with a cruel smile, agreed, adding that associating with someone like Shizuki only made her look better. Their laughter stung, leaving Shizuki with a painful realization: he was seen as worthless. This moment marked a turning point, showing him the cruelty behind appearances and deepening his feelings of isolation. Years later, Shizuki is now in high school. He sits quietly in class, focused on his notes, when a boy reminds him it's time to go to the cafeteria. Shizuki calmly responds that he'll join them after finishing his work. The boy jokes about Shizuki's slow pace, to which Shizuki explains it's harder to see from the back. As the boy leaves, Shizuki feels a sense of accomplishment. His plan to reinvent himself is working. Since starting high school, he's successfully integrated into a social circle he once only dreamed of. To him, this is a personal victory after the misery he endured in middle school. His hard work has paid off. No one here knows about his past, except for one person. Shizuka Kusunoki, a girl from his middle school, also attends the same high school. Known for her beauty and rumored popularity, some even say she's a model. Although Shizuki has never spoken to her, he feels an unspoken connection. They used to spend time in the library, and in his mind they're alike. But he reminds himself of his vow to avoid beautiful women, a lesson he learned the hard way. As he leaves the classroom, he tells himself that even though both he and Kusunoki came from the bottom, they have no reason to acknowledge it. As Shizuki walks down the hall, Kusunoki suddenly appears in front of him, calling his name. Startled, Shizuki freezes as the other students' attention shifts toward them. Kusunoki, visibly upset, apologizes and asks for his help. Shizuki is caught off guard, unsure why she's speaking to him so openly. To his surprise, tears form in her eyes as she explains she's in trouble and only he can understand her situation. Shizuki, struggling to comprehend, wonders why she's come to him after all this time. Kusunoki then comments that Shizuki has changed since middle school, which causes him to blurt out that she's changed too. Embarrassed by his outburst, he quickly apologizes, but Kusunoki's expression softens. She asks if he's okay, not realizing she has unknowingly triggered an old wound for Shizuki. Ever since that day in middle school, making eye contact with beautiful girls causes him physical discomfort. Despite this, Shizuki reassures her he's fine and suggests they talk somewhere quieter. The two find a bench in a nearby park, where Kusunoki opens up. She admits that, despite her outward transformation, she still feels like the same person inside. She's been avoiding others, but it's becoming harder to keep up the facade. Shizuki, reflecting on their shared past, listens carefully. He wonders if she sought him out because of this unspoken connection, and she confirms his suspicion. Shizuki tries to offer support, admitting he also struggles with fitting in. But to his surprise, Kusunoki disagrees. She tells him she admires how effortlessly he interacts with their classmates, unaware of the inner battles he still faces. Shizuki is puzzled by Kusunoki's admission, assuming she has friends like anyone else. However, Kusunoki reveals that, despite interacting with people, she doesn't feel close to anyone and believes the girls in their class avoid her. Shizuki, who always thought she was popular, is surprised. He had seen her surrounded by boys, but now realizes that her situation mirrors his own. Kusunoki continues, explaining that even though she changed her appearance, it doesn't matter if she remains the same inside. She confesses that she was isolated in middle school because she thought she was a bad person. Hearing this, Shizuki is reminded of his own past and suddenly urges her to be more confident. Caught off guard by his intensity, Kusunoki listens as Shizuki asks why she wanted a fresh start in high school. He points out that her efforts to change show how much she cares. Encouraging her to take small steps, he assures her that with practice, interacting with others will get easier. Midway through his words, Shizuki realizes he's speaking to her without feeling sick, which leaves him both confused and relieved. As he prepares to leave, Kusunoki stops him and asks how she should take those small steps. After a moment's thought, Shizuki suggests that making one real friend could lead to more. Out of the blue, Kusunoki asks if he would be her friend. Taken aback, Shizuki wonders why she's so eager and hesitates. He suspects that once she improves her social skills, she'll become even more popular and might not need him. Still, seeing her vulnerability, he reluctantly agrees. Kusunoki is overcome with emotion, thanking him tearfully. Shizuki, feeling uncertain, tells her their friendship is temporary, just until she makes other friends. Kusunoki remains cheerful, saying she's happy either way. Shizuki, confused by her response, reflects on how her presence no longer triggers his symptoms. He thinks that if their friendship doesn't worsen his condition, perhaps it's not a bad thing, though he doubts it will change much between them. The next day at lunch, Kusunoki unexpectedly sits across from Shizuki, catching him off guard. He's irritated by the attention and the whispers from their classmates, who seem to misinterpret the situation. Kusunoki, smiling as usual, mentions that she's always wanted to eat with a friend. Shizuki is thrown by her sincerity, and moments later, his friends tease him, leaving him more frustrated. Kusunoki innocently asks what's wrong, and Shizuki, feeling defeated, mutters that he has nothing to say. Despite his irritation, Shizuki feels sorry for Kusunoki, who has never had the experience of eating with a friend. He decides to go along with it, just for today. With a soft expression, Kusunoki asks if she can call him by his first name, since they're friends now. Shizuki, bewildered, hesitates but eventually tells her she can. He then stands up and offers to get drinks for them, and Kusunoki happily joins him. As they walk through the hallway, Shizuki remains unsure of what their new friendship will mean for his life. But things take a sudden turn when they encounter his old bully from middle school. Instantly, Shizuki feels his chest tighten as painful memories rush back, reminding him of the torment he once endured. Kusunoki, concerned, asked Shizuki if he was all right. He turned around, his face full of horror, struggling to believe what was happening. The person who had caused him so much trauma stood right in front of him. He remembered searching through all the names on the class roster, confident that he hadn't seen the name Hebikawa Rarisa anywhere. Yet here she was. Another girl soon called out to Hebikawa, asking what was going on. Hebikawa then turned to Shizuki, asking if he was fine, which made him quickly hide his face, muttering that he was. After that, she addressed Kusunoki, inquiring if she was his friend. Kusunoki replied affirmatively, and Hebikawa, noticing Shizuki's discomfort, suggested that he might need to visit the infirmary. Moving closer, she advised him to take care of himself, and after saying this, she calmly walked away. Shizuki watched her leave, feeling a growing sense of confusion. Her voice, the look in her eyes, and even the ribbon in her hair triggered something in him. There was no denying it, she was definitely the same person from his past. His head started spinning with anxiety, knowing that his peaceful high school days might now be over. Kusunoki, still concerned for him, suggested they go to the infirmary, noticing how unwell he seemed. She even offered to help him if he couldn't walk. But Shizuki, still reeling from the encounter with Hebikawa, suddenly declared that he wouldn't let things end like this. His outburst took Kusunoki by surprise, but he continued, saying he wasn't going to let Hebikawa ruin his life. He explained that he had come to high school with the goal of starting over, and that his past with her had been left behind long ago. When Shizuki made this loud declaration, Kusunoki was left in a state of shock, unable to fully comprehend what he was talking about. However, out of fear or confusion, she agreed with everything he said. She then asked if he was feeling any better, and Shizuki replied that he was. He realized that if he could stay focused on his school life, he might still be able to maintain the peace he had found. With this in mind, he became determined to protect the high school life he had worked so hard to build. As the school day came to an end and students lingered in the classroom, Kusunoki approached Shizuki with a bright expression on her face. She asked if they could walk home together, her request catching him off guard. It wasn't a simple thing for Shizuki, especially since the other students had overheard her. Surprised by her question, they all turned their attention towards him, waiting for his reaction. Shizuki stammered, unsure how to respond to Kusunoki's request. Sensing his hesitation, Kusunoki asked if he had other plans. In a panic, Shizuki lied, saying yes. Smiling sweetly, she told him that if that were the case, it was fine, and that she could wait for him. Her genuine smile filled him with guilt, as it seemed too pure for the situation. Meanwhile, a group of boys from the class walked over, playfully teasing Shizuki about the idea of going home with Kusunoki. One of them placed a hand on Shizuki's shoulder, making a comment about how close they seemed. Another boy then asked if Shizuki was dating Kusunoki. Stunned by the question, Shizuki's mind raced. If these popular students started noticing him too much, his situation could get worse. He quickly denied the dating rumors and ran out of the classroom. The boys watched him go, jokingly remarking that it was a shame he had to go home that day. They then turned to Kusunoki, suggesting she join them instead. As Shizuki walked down the streets later, he muttered to himself, still in a bad mood. It had been a terrible day, and nothing seemed to be going right. He also felt guilty for leaving Kusunoki behind. While he walked, lost in his thoughts, he suddenly heard someone call out to him. Turning around, he was surprised to see Kusunoki running after him. She greeted him politely, and Shizuki, still confused, asked why she had followed him. She explained that she had been chasing after him and was tired from running. Puzzled, Shizuki asked if she had really run all that way just to catch up with him, wondering why she would go to such lengths. With a cute smile, she explained that she simply wanted to go home with him. Her words made Shizuki nervous. He placed his hand on his face, unsure how to react. Kusunoki, noticing his discomfort, asked if he disliked the idea. He quickly denied it, but raised his voice as he explained that it wasn't normal for a guy and a girl to go home together like that, even if they were friends. Kusunoki was clearly shocked by his statement. Shizuki continued, adding that even eating lunch together wasn't ideal for them. When she asked why it was such a problem, he explained that people might get the wrong idea about their relationship. After saying this, Shizuki resumed walking, telling Kusunoki not to talk to him too much in the classroom from now on. He hoped she understood the situation, even if she didn't like it. Still, Kusunoki wasn't discouraged. She called out to him again and explained that she hadn't had many opportunities to talk to people at school and was struggling to make friends. She then politely asked if she could start calling him at night. Shizuki, surprised, turned back to her. She clarified that phone calls would be a way for them to talk without people misunderstanding their relationship. Repeating her request, she asked if that would be all right. Shizuki hesitated, feeling conflicted. He wasn't sure if it was appropriate to have phone conversations with a female friend at night, or if he was just overthinking the situation. Kusunoki continued to ask, her tone soft and polite, while Shizuki looked at her, still confused and unsure of what to do. Late at night, Shizuki lay on his bed, staring at his phone. It was already past midnight, and his mind wandered to Kusunoki. Her phone number was saved in his contacts now, something that still felt strange to him. He thought back to when she had asked if they could talk on the phone. At that moment, Shizuki had been unsure of what to make of her request, but he had agreed. Now, both of them had each other's numbers. When Kusunoki saw his name appear on her screen, she had been amazed and then politely asked if she could call him that night. Shizuki had been taken by surprise but told her he would call her instead. She had agreed with a sweet smile, telling him she would be waiting for his call. But Shizuki had said this not out of convenience but because he needed time to mentally prepare himself. Now, lying there, he debated what to do next. He didn't want to make the call and didn't even know what they would talk about. He hadn't spoken to her in so long that he felt completely out of his depth. As he pondered, his eyes fell on the alarm clock. Setting it for 10 minutes, he decided to limit the conversation to that time. Gathering his courage, he made the call. When Kusunoki answered, Shizuki greeted her, introducing himself awkwardly. Kusunoki responded with her name, and the conversation quickly hit a lull. Shizuki apologized for calling so late, but Kusunoki reassured him, thanking him for taking the time to call. Silence followed, and Shizuki realized how awkward things were. He needed to say something, anything, to keep the conversation going. Desperate, he brought up the weather, asking if it was colder than the day before. Kusunoki agreed that it was, and Shizuki mentioned that he wasn't a fan of cold weather. He then asked about her preference, to which she simply replied that she didn't mind it. Feeling uncomfortable, Shizuki noted the lack of detail in her answers. The conversation was becoming more awkward by the minute. With only 5 minutes left on the clock, he scrambled to find a safer topic and asked her about her hobbies. Kusunoki, now more engaged, told him she liked watching anime and reading manga. This surprised Shizuki, and he admitted that he also enjoyed those things. Curious, he asked what genres she liked. Kusunoki then launched into an enthusiastic and detailed explanation about her favorite series. Listening to her go on, Shizuki found himself feeling overwhelmed. Her excitement contrasted sharply with how quiet she had been earlier. He commented that she sounded like a stereotypical otaku, which she took in stride, asking him what his favorite manga was. Shizuki thought back to his childhood and mentioned that he liked a series called Nova. To his surprise, Kusunoki replied that she also loved it and owned all the volumes. Just then, his alarm clock went off. Shizuki hurried to stop the noise, but Kusunoki, curious, asked about the sound. He brushed it off, saying it was nothing, and then shifted the topic, mentioning a rumor he had heard about a third part of Nova being serialized next year. Kusunoki's interest piqued even more, and she asked him to tell her everything about it. The next day, sitting in class, Shizuki felt groggy. He glanced at his phone and noticed the call timer from his conversation with Kusunoki. To his shock, it had lasted for an hour and 32 minutes. He couldn't believe how long they had talked and felt slightly unsettled by how naturally the conversation had flowed once it picked up. He reassured himself, thinking that it made sense since they shared similar interests as fellow otakus. While Shizuki was lost in thought, Kusunoki walked into the classroom. He noticed immediately that she looked gloomy, a stark contrast to her usual cheerful self. This surprised him. As she placed her bag on the desk and greeted him, Shizuki responded kindly but couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He wondered what could have happened, given how happy she had been the night before. Still, he reminded himself not to get too involved. During school hours, he resolved to avoid interacting with her too much, fearing the complications it could bring. Despite his decision, Shizuki found himself unable to stop glancing at her. As the school day ended and students began packing to leave, he saw her in the corridor. Against his better judgment, he called out to her. She turned, asking if something was wrong. Shizuki hesitated but eventually mentioned that she seemed down today, a fact that had been bothering him. Even though he had planned to avoid her, he realized that saying nothing would only make things more uncomfortable for him. Kusunoki began talking about their phone call from the previous night. She admitted that she had realized she was the one doing all the talking and that it had made her feel guilty. With a sad expression, she apologized, her regret evident on her face. Shizuki, stunned by her reaction, quickly reassured her. He explained that their phone calls were meant to help her get used to talking more, so there was no need for her to feel bad. It wasn't a big deal. But Kusunoki remained upset, sitting down and expressing how the conversation had felt one-sided. She confessed that while she had enjoyed it, she felt awful thinking she was the only one who did. Shizuki, feeling sympathy for her, told her not to apologize. In fact, he admitted, the conversation had been surprisingly enjoyable for him, too. Kusunoki seemed taken aback by his words, and for a moment, the tension between them eased. Suddenly, Shizuki's friends, Harino and Tsuji, appeared. Shizuki was startled by their arrival, and they teased him, asking what he was up to. They mentioned that they had been looking for him since he had disappeared on them. Approaching closer, they asked if they were interrupting something. One of them even joked that Shizuki seemed to be forgetting about his friends. Shizuki, flustered, assured them that it wasn't like that. Harino then asked directly what his relationship with Kusunoki was. Panicked, Shizuki quickly bid Kusunoki farewell, leaving her visibly surprised by his abrupt behavior. He told her to head home, and she agreed, though she seemed a bit confused. His friends looked disappointed, pressing him once more to clarify if he was really not going with her. They even apologized for their earlier teasing. Shizuki reassured them again, insisting that he wasn't involved in anything romantic. As they walked away, Kusunoki, already some distance off, suddenly stopped and called out to Shizuki. With a cheerful smile, she told him that she had really enjoyed their time together last night. Then, she waved and wished him goodbye. Shizuki stood frozen, his friends now staring at him with a mix of surprise and amusement. They exchanged glances before teasing him, saying it seemed like he had indeed enjoyed himself last night. Shizuki, growing more flustered, quickly tried to explain that nothing of the sort had happened, insisting it was all just a misunderstanding. In class, Harino looked at Shizuki with a serious expression and asked if he had really done nothing with Kusunoki. Shizuki tried to remain calm and repeated that their relationship wasn't like that. Harino admitted that he didn't fully trust him, which only gave Shizuki a headache. He couldn't help but think that Kusunoki's vague comments were partly to blame for the confusion. Tsuji chimed in, pointing out that Shizuki was the only guy Kusunoki called by his first name, and they seemed unusually close. Tsuji added that, in his opinion, they looked quite intimate. Shizuki explained that he and Kusunoki just happened to attend the same middle school and that she was the girl he felt closest to among his friends. Harino seemed surprised to hear this, saying Shizuki was lucky to have gone to school with her. He commented that Kusunoki must have been pretty back then, and wished he could have seen her. Frustrated by the conversation, Shizuki stood up and loudly told them to stop talking about it. Harino and Tsuji exchanged confused looks. Harino then expressed his desire to get along with Kusunoki as well. He asked Shizuki if he could arrange for them to have lunch together. Shizuki stepped forward and firmly declined the offer. He thought it was out of the question since Kusunoki struggled with communication, and Harino couldn't sit still. As Shizuki made his way down the stairs, the thought of Kusunoki and Harino meeting caused a headache to form. However, he quickly realized that if they could get along, he wouldn't need to worry about Kusunoki making friends. He figured that if he could facilitate that connection, it would remove one threat to his peaceful high school life. Just then, Hebikawa approached from the other side of the corridor, and they accidentally bumped into each other, causing her books to scatter all over the floor. Shizuki quickly apologized and asked if she was okay. When he looked at her, he was shocked to find her sitting on the floor. Hebikawa remarked that they seemed to keep bumping into each other, and added with a cute smile that it felt like they had a habit of meeting this way. Suddenly, feeling overwhelmed, Shizuki bowed his head and shouted in frustration. Hebikawa looked surprised by his reaction. At that moment, Tsuji arrived, taking in the scene. He noted that Shizuki appeared to be having quite a meltdown. Tsuji stepped closer and asked what was going on. Hebikawa explained that she thought Shizuki had suddenly gotten sick. Tsuji was taken aback by this. Hebikawa then turned to Shizuki and politely asked if he could stand. She requested Tsuji's help to pick up the scattered books. As they gathered the books together, Hebikawa smiled sweetly and commented on how they were such good friends. Before leaving, she told Shizuki to take care of himself, leaving him to ponder their interaction as she walked away. Tsuji suddenly grabbed Shizuki and asked if he was friends with Hebikawa. Shizuki, trembling a bit, insisted that Tsuji was mistaken and that he had no connection with her. Later, Harino asked Tsuji if he knew Hebikawa. Tsuji replied that he did and explained that he was aware of all the pretty girls in their year. He mentioned that Hebikawa was from class 8, and was rumored to be the second prettiest girl in their year. Curious, Harino then asked who the first prettiest girl was. Tsuji confidently said it was Kusunoki. Shizuki turned to Tsuji, a bit annoyed, and asked if that meant he should be grateful for getting along with Kusunoki. Tsuji nodded, adding that he would like a chance to get to know her better. He then asked Shizuki to help him out in making that happen. Shizuki agreed to ask Kusunoki about it, and Tsuji seemed pleased with that answer. Later, when Shizuki called Kusunoki to ask if they could have lunch together, she declined, stating that she wasn't interested. This caught Shizuki by surprise. He couldn't believe she was really rejecting his invitation. When he asked her why, Kusunoki wanted to know what he wanted to discuss, as he had mentioned needing to ask her something. Shizuki explained that he thought it would be a good opportunity for her to improve her communication skills, suggesting she had nothing to lose by participating. Kusunoki then clarified that when she mentioned eating together, she meant it would just be her and Harino. Shizuki informed her that Tsuji would also be joining them and politely asked if she was comfortable with having more people around. He reassured her that Harino would be a better friend to her than he was. To his surprise, Kusunoki disagreed. She insisted that if they were going to have lunch together, Shizuki should be there too. If he wasn't coming, then she wouldn't either. Shizuki could sense her sadness and asked if she was upset with him. He felt guilty and apologized, thinking it was his fault for her distress. Kusunoki responded that she was going to sleep and abruptly hung up the call. Shizuki stared at his phone, realizing that their conversation had lasted about 15 minutes. He felt puzzled, wondering if she was angry with him, or if he had said something wrong. Meanwhile, Kusunoki sat on the floor, feeling sad by the exchange. The following day, Shizuki and Kusunoki made their way to the cafeteria for lunch, joined by their friends Tsuji and Harino. Once they settled around the table, Harino excitedly exclaimed that everything tasted especially good that day. He turned to Tsuji for his take, but Tsuji, maintaining his usual relaxed demeanor, shrugged it off, saying the food wasn't anything special as he sipped his juice. As Shizuki looked around the table, he couldn't help but notice how animated Harino seemed. His gaze shifted to Kusunoki, who sat quietly, her expression downcast. A wave of concern washed over him. She looked miserable, and he realized she hadn't spoken a word yet. Just then, Harino broke the silence and asked Kusunoki if she had gone to the same middle school as Shizuki. Kusunoki looked taken aback by the question. Shizuki quickly explained that although they had both attended the same middle school, they were in different classes and only started talking after entering high school. Suji chimed in, pointing out that this meant they hadn't been friends for very long. Harino then stood up with a puzzled smile on his face and nervously declared that he also wanted to be friends with Kusunoki. He extended his hand for a handshake and asked for her contact information, offering his number in return. The suddenness of his gesture left everyone in stunned silence. Kusunoki didn't respond right away, making Harino realize she was ignoring him. He quickly apologized for his abrupt approach. Shizuki observed the unfolding scene and turned to Kusunoki, assuring her that it was fine. He believed she and Harino would make good friends and added that once she got to know Harino, she would see he was a serious and nice guy. Though Kusunoki remained silent and confused, she trusted Shizuki's words and agreed to give it a try, stating that if Shizuki thought so, she could manage it. Suji and Harino looked astonished at her response. Harino quickly thanked Kusunoki for her kindness and asked her to wait, explaining that he didn't have his phone with him. Shizuki pointed out that it was probably in the classroom. Harino promised he'd return shortly. Later, Shizuki stood with Harino, who clasped his hands in front of him, genuinely thanking Shizuki for helping him establish a friendship with Kusunoki. Shizuki modestly replied that he hadn't done much, but Harino insisted that it was all thanks to him. He was surprised he had actually exchanged contact information with Kusunoki. Shizuki couldn't help but notice the unusual happiness radiating from Harino. It was clear he genuinely liked Kusunoki. With a smile, Shizuki remarked that Harino was experiencing the joys of youth. He then politely asked if they were finished, and if they should head back to class. Just then, Harino paused him with another request. Shizuki felt a bit anxious, wondering what it could be. Harino simply wanted to have lunch with Kusunoki again. Shizuki agreed and sent a message to Kusunoki on Harino's behalf. As he typed the message, a wave of irritation surged within him. He felt that Harino should be the one asking Kusunoki directly, but he sent it anyway because Harino had pleaded, saying he was too shy to make the request himself. Shizuki pondered why, if Harino was too shy to ask for lunch, he would want Kusunoki's phone number at all. During class, Shizuki noticed Kusunoki nearby. When she picked up her phone, he saw she had read his message. He gestured for her attention, but when she looked up, she suddenly averted her gaze and appeared sad, saying nothing. Shizuki felt a jolt of confusion at her reaction. Worry began to settle in. Maybe Kusunoki was ignoring him, and he couldn't shake the feeling that she might be upset. Just then, Suji approached to say goodbye as the school day ended. Shizuki returned the farewell quietly. Kusunoki stood up, grabbed her bag, and walked outside. Realizing that Kusunoki had been acting strangely since their phone call the day before, Shizuki felt a wave of anxiety wash over him. He told himself he needed to stop overthinking things about girls and get a grip. He resolved not to let Kusunoki's mood affect him, whether she was angry or not. As Kusunoki left the school, Shizuki followed her, and soon they found themselves standing together on the street. With a polite but nervous look, Kusunoki asked him what was wrong. Shizuki remained silent, staring at the ground. Although he hesitated to question her behavior, he eventually asked why she was ignoring him. Kusunoki simply replied with a question of her own, asking if they should continue talking to each other. This response left Shizuki bewildered. She pointed out that he was the one who said she shouldn't talk to him at school. Hearing this filled him with guilt. He realized she had a point. She then turned and began to walk away, stating that she knew he hated her. Shizuki was taken aback by her accusation. Kusunoki glanced back, adding that she could tell he was pushing her toward his other friends. Sadly, she stated that she knew he wanted to end their friendship, which was why she had been acting the way she had. In that moment, Shizuki realized she might be right. Even though he had reached out to her when she was struggling, he acknowledged that his own feelings had overshadowed hers. Memories from childhood resurfaced, times when he had approached others with hope, only to be rejected. He understood how deeply such actions could hurt someone. Determined to make amends, Shizuki walked up to Kusunoki, sincerely apologizing and asking for her forgiveness. She sat down on the ground, still looking sad, and admitted that she struggled to talk to boys. She revealed that she had been bullied in middle school, which made boys seem intimidating to her. Shizuki pointed out that he was a boy too, but Kusunoki quickly responded, insisting he was different from the others. She explained that they had often been in the library together and shared a class. She never expected to start high school with him or discover so many common interests. Kusunoki shared that she felt comfortable around Shizuki, which was why she was okay with him being her only male friend, despite wanting to make more friends. Overcome with emotion, Shizuki sat down beside her and began to cry, expressing that he understood and would stop trying so hard to find other friends for her. Kusunoki thanked him, and in that moment, Shizuki felt his heart pounding loudly in his chest. To his surprise, Kusunoki revealed that her heart was racing too. She gave him a warm smile and noted that this was the first disagreement she'd ever had with a friend. Shizuki realized it was the first time he had experienced something similar with a female friend, and it made his heart race even faster. Kusunoki then stood up and politely asked if they could continue talking, even at school. Shizuki agreed, happy to oblige. As she walked away with a light heart, he watched her, still puzzled and wondering about the reason behind the intense pounding of his heart.